Guys, the sport has become a joke at this point. Like, it really has. The sport of boxing is maybe considered the laughing stock of all other sports. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, and as you can tell by the title of this video, this is about Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. So, as many of you know, Jake Paul fought Tyron Woodley in a boxing match a couple days ago. And basically, what happened, Jake Paul won via split decision against the former UFC welterweight world champion. And needless to say, the event was just really odd. It's just one of these strange, cherry picking events. I mean, the card was just full of obvious picks of who was gonna win, right? I mean, you had Daniel Dubois fighting on this undercard. Daniel Dubois, out of all people, I would not expect to be fighting on a Jake Paul undercard. You know what I mean? But apparently, this was his U.S. debut, and he was fighting this guy who was just this massive underdog, right? I mean, Daniel Dubois apparently in this fight was like a, minus 1,000 favorite or something like that, right? I mean, it was so like lopsided apparently. And I think Daniel Dubois got the knockout in the first round. I didn't watch it. I didn't even watch this card live, so I didn't really know, but I guess that's what happened. And yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of weird to see. I mean, I guess after losing to Joe Joyce, he kind of just went on to fight guys who were not at a high level at all. You had Tommy Fury on the undercard as well. I don't really want to pick on Tommy Fury too much because, let's be honest, the guy's just become an easy target at this point, right? I mean, Tommy Fury, he's been fighting guys who have more losses than they have wins. I mean, apparently he fought a guy who was 10 and 100, apparently. Something ridiculous like that, and Tommy Fury was able to beat him. And then, so he's fighting this guy called Anthony Taylor. So, Anthony Taylor, this guy was a guy, okay, so he was an MMA fighter, apparently, who was 5 feet 6 inches tall. He was a natural lightweight in MMA. Apparently, he was 155 pounds. And, he had his debut boxing match before this one, and he lost a split decision. So he goes into this fight, and he's having to come up to cruiserweight to fight Tommy Fury. And obviously, Tommy Fury, having all these physical advantages, having the youth on his side, having the power on his side, having the, strength, height, size on his side, it was an easy night for him, right? Or it should have been, at least. I mean, the sad thing is that Tommy Fury wasn't able to knock this guy out, right? Like, apparently he went to a decision with this guy, So, yeah, I mean, like I said, the undercard was just very strange. It was full of, like, I mean, if you were to bet on this, on the undercard, it was going to be an easy night for betting. It was going to be easy money. And obviously, Jake Paul, the main event, he fought Tyron Woodley, and he won a split decision in an 8-round bout. So, yeah. In terms of Jake Paul, I knew who this guy was before he started boxing. I mean, I knew of him. I didn't really watch anything from him, but apparently from what I heard from other people, he was apparently a bit of a prick, right? He was like one of these, young, disrespectful guys and all that, and he was kind of a sellout, something like that. And, now he's made his way into the boxing world, and, he's made a mockery of it, is all I can say. So the guy's been fighting, the guy's been using his social media platform to create some sort of boxing career for himself. And as you can see, he's calling out all these celebrities, all these professional boxers, all these MMA fighters, right? All these other athletes. And, you can see that some people are taking his bait, and, they're thinking, oh yeah, I can beat Jake Paul because he's going to be easy, right? But the people who are saying that are significantly smaller and shorter than Jake Paul and don't even know how to box. I mean, you had Anderson Gibb fighting Jake Paul in his professional debut. And Gibb was always an overrated fighter, right? His footwork was terrible. His technique was not that great. He had no power in his punches. And he was basically the Homer Simpson of YouTube boxing, right? I mean, he would walk into punches. And in this fight with Jake, I mean, he basically bum rushed Jake with this Mike Tyson kind of style, thinking it would, destroy Jake Paul, and it completely backfired on him. Jake just had to use his jab, and he even knocked Anderson Gibb down with a jab, and, it was an easy night for Jake Paul. And then Jake goes on to fight Nate Robinson, right? Nate Robinson, a guy who has never taken a punch before in his life, right? A guy who's never boxed before in his life. Nate Robinson thought he could beat Jake Paul for some reason. I don't know why. And, Nate Robinson being a guy who's 5'9", a guy who is, weighs a lot less than Jake. He went into this fight and he looked terrible, right? I mean, Jake, like I said, Nate Robinson, he couldn't take a punch in this fight, and, that's what resulted in Jake winning or stopping him within 2 rounds, right? And then he fought Ben Askren, right? And Ben Askren, we all knew, right? We all know that Ben Askren was not that great of a striker, or probably the worst striker in the UFC. He was more of a wrestler. And even then, I mean, he wasn't, he was getting beat up by guys like Robbie Lawler, right? Until he was able to find a choke, sorry. He got knocked out by Jorge Masvidal, another overrated MMA fighter. And, he got stopped within the first 5 seconds. And then he got pieced up by Damian Maia on the feet. He got outstruck by Damian Maia until Damian Maia got it to the ground and he was able to find a choke. So, we all knew how that fight with Jake Paul was going to end. You know what I mean? Jake Paul pretty much pieced him up the entire fight. But even at times, like, Jake was still backing up at times, right? Because he didn't want to, engage, or, he didn't want to risk anything or risk trading with Ben Askren, right? And Ben Askren, being an absolute bum, didn't know how to capitalize on that, didn't know how to cut off the ring. And that's what resulted in him getting TKO'd in the first round, right? So, I mean, in terms of Jake Paul, I mean, I don't think he's paying guys off to take a dive for him. I think essentially what's happening is that Jake Paul and his team are manufacturing his career to where they're just finding, the lowest level of opposition they can find, to the point where they know that the likelihood or the chances of Jake Paul losing to them are slim to none, right? Regardless of if they're confident in Jake Paul's boxing ability or not. And it just reeks of just this whole low class pop culture self-entitlement. And it really is a bad look on the sport, to be honest. You know what I mean? It really is. Now, in terms of this Tyron Woodley fight, to be honest, had they given that fight to Woodley, I personally wouldn't have complained. I really wouldn't have, and I don't think a lot of other people would have complained. I mean, yeah, you would have Jake Paul's fanboys complaining after the fight, and you would have some people kind of be suspicious about it afterwards, but I mean, you give it a couple days and people would actually maybe realize that Jake Paul, his performance wasn't all that impressive, right? I mean, it really wasn't. Jake Paul apparently, he basically ran all night, right? I mean, that's all he was doing, I mean, he had that style of just running and holding, kind of like how other fighters do. Because he went into this fight basically with the mindset of I'm going to knock Tyron Woodley out within 2 rounds or something, right? Because Tyron Woodley's washed up. He's an MMA fighter. He's on a 4-fight losing streak, so I'm going to knock him out within 1 round, right? And then when Jake couldn't get him out there in 1 round, I mean, it completely backfired on him. And Jake, he resulted to this, style of just trying to, run around the ropes and just look to get a points decision victory, right? Um, and it was apparently Tyron Woodley who was the one who actually dropped Jake Paul, right? I mean, that should have been a knockdown, right? The thing is, it's in the rule book of if the ropes are preventing you from falling down. Like if you're halfway, going down halfway to the canvas and the ropes are preventing you from getting dropped, then it counts as a knockdown, right? So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that's a knockdown. And yeah, I mean, like I said, if people, if they gave the decision to Tyron Woodley, I don't think people would have complained. You know what I mean? Because, I think people would have, like, give it 4 days, and, people would have slowed down the footage. They would have looked at the fight, and they would have thought, oh, yeah, the way Jake fought was, like, cowardly. So, like, screw it. Who cares? Just give the decision to Tyron Woodley. You know what I mean? Yeah, I keep seeing all these people saying, like, how brave Jake Paul is and how, he's so brave for fighting a guy like Tyron Woodley and how he's got all this heart and stuff. Well, I mean, he's ducking the rematch now, so that tells you how much heart he really has. I mean, it's just, it's one of these things, right? That's boxing for you. I don't know what to say. I mean, Jake Paul's a coward. I don't mind calling him that, right? I mean, he's cherry picking his career. He's being very careful about who he fights, right? He doesn't want to go up against high level competition, and that's why I don't mind calling him a coward, because that's, you know what I mean. The boxers I respect are the ones who actually like go out there and seek dangerous fights. You know what I mean? Not guys who will just like Tommy Fury and Jake Paul who will just, just be so careful about who they pick as their opponents, right? So, yeah, man. I mean, this was a weird event, I mean, you had Tyron Woodley trying to press forward, and he even had success at times. He was landing the harder shots and all. But obviously, with Tyron Woodley being on the older side, him lacking the reflexes and athleticism, he wasn't able to, make it so convincing. He wasn't able to knock Jake Paul out. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I don't know. I don't think there's anything more I have to say about Jake Paul. I don't think anyone's gonna beat Jake Paul. I think he's gonna just continue to fight guys who are just hopeless at the sport. I mean, he might fight Tommy Fury next. I mean, that'll just be like two cherry pickers fighting each other, right? And honestly, like, I don't think anyone's the winner in that fight. Like, the people who watch that fight are the losers, I'd say. I mean, I guess if anything, Jake would win, but I don't know, man. Like I said, it's just, this is kind of just turned into a whole joke, and yeah. But anyway, let me know what you guys think of the fight and of Jake Paul. Hope you guys have a good day. Take care and peace.